just call for it. I have it in my notes, but I may want to do it in a different place.
I do.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Ann. How are you? Are we on streaming yet, Kelly?
Sir?
Are we streaming?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I'm going to try to find it. Hello, if I haven't greeted you yet. I need to find us. First United Methodist Church of Belton. We are live. Look at that. Okay. Let us know you're with us if you would. Appreciate that. Hey, Delpha. Thanks for joining us. Brenda. Thanks for joining us. Pat. I know. Well, you'll see the delay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Pat is watching us. All right. We're going to give it a moment here, and then we will start. Again, you can interrupt with questions. If you want to be able to get in your Bible where we're going to be one verse, probably the first verse we will look at tonight, a little bit into the study. It's out of John chapter 10, and it is going to be verse 10. John 10:10. We will probably also look at, we might look at John 3:16, but John 10:10 for sure. How is everybody doing? Everybody doing well? Do you need a better pen?
I have a pencil.
My least favorite pen. You can have it. Those stick pins and I just don't get along. All right. Well, this is crooked, but I hope that's going to be okay. It's going to fall again. Okay. We are going to fix this before the new year. We're going to get a tripod with a paper tablet. So thank you for joining us on YouTube and Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us in the sanctuary here. We have a couple more weeks. We have 2 more weeks of doing the Bible study. And then because we're getting into Thanksgiving and then into the Advent season, we will take a break till after the first of the year. So we have this week and next week. We are focusing on living out our faith, living out some of these 3 simple rules, the 3 simple rules of, and if you know them, say them. If you don't know them, look up at the screen. Do no harm.
Do good. Stay in love with
Right.
God.
Do no harm, do good, stay in love with God. I think we can say that again. Do no harm, do good, stay in love with God. So we're looking at that again this week, but on a practical level, kind of how that comes into practice from the standpoint of our faith. I like to say kind of like where the rubber meets the road, you know, how this works out. And in the United Methodist Church, we have that. And remember, the 3 simple rules were given by John Wesley to people that were meeting in groups. To say, you know, when it all comes down to it, here's how we're going to live out our faith. Let's follow these, and then there were some specifics. So now we're getting into some specifics for our societal and cultural context. Through what we call the social principles that we have, social principles in the United Methodist Church. We introduced those last week. They are not church law, but they are our book of discipline. So they are they are guidance and encouragement for us to follow. We have social principles about the natural world. We have social principles about the social community. We have social principles about the political community, the economic community, and so on. They kind of categorize them. So we're going to talk about those as Christians. Now, in our how we live it out, and how it's hard with the social principles to be exclusively of one political platform or another. And I have to admit that some of the social principles that we discussed, even though I want to try to do it objectively, my bias may be revealed. I just want to own that. My own bias may be revealed. I want to own that, and it will be obvious. So, all right. Nancy, wonderful to have you join us. So, when we look at political things, and I know there's independents, I know there's libertarians, I know there's Green Party, but I took two. I took two of kind of the major political parties in the United States, Republicans and Democrats. Okay? And I mean, you might say conservative. Another way we divide politically is conservative and liberal. We might even divide conservative and liberal socially in our social views for the social community. Or traditional progressive. That's a way that we're seeing lines and dividing on lines within the church. So we have politically, probably kind of social community, and then religious community that we divide. And I think it's hard to be a follower of Christ and just being on one side or the other. So I think that most Christians, and you might think that big C is for centrist, but it's really not. So I'll turn that little C into a nice cross as well. I think Christians, we end up with a mix and a blend of both and rather than either or. Does that make sense so far? So, for example, and I said, if you want to talk about hot button issues, we will. So let's just do it. Right? Let's take a couple of controversial topics, and let's do it with the agreement that we agree to disagree. A wonderful John Wesley quote that he said. He said, "Well, let's just agree that we disagree on this." And that, all views are welcome, and people have their views and convictions about this. So, and again, my bias is coming through. I will own that. So, an example, on this side, let's take, because abortion is not controversial. Right? So let's just go there. This is kind of a pro-life. That's a term they use, right? Pro-life. This side would probably use the term pro-choice. And it kind of divides. And some people think, well, all Christians are supposed to be maybe over here on the pro-life. But now we're going to see how maybe there's some inconsistency when we look at the next issue. And this is where I'm going to be, my biased view is going to come through because of the way I write this. They're pro-life, but when it comes to the death penalty, pro-death penalty. I'll write it real small just to make my point. just me, or does anybody else have a hard time? How can you be pro-life and pro-death all at the same time? That's something I struggle with. I think we probably struggle with that as Christians. Now, let's pick on everybody. Let's be fair. So, pro-choice means that yes, abort. Such as a fetus, abort a life. We're willing to do that. But then when it comes, anti-death penalty. And this is not across the board, it's not 100%, but typically this is where it falls. We know there is crossover in it. But there's some inconsistency here. So in the church, from our Christian faith, we try and come to terms with this in a way that reflects the gospel and the teachings of Christ and our Judeo-Christian heritage that we have. Does all that make sense so far? Kind of, sort of. And it's okay. I mean, wherever you line up. So I would like to share where in the United Methodist Church, our stance, the official one that we have, and our social principles on these, and we can talk about them, and then we'll have our scripture out of John 10:10. And if you want to look this up in the Book of Discipline, it is available online. You don't have to buy it. I mean, it's so old. This was from 2016. This is our last one. We weren't able to have one in 2020 because of the pandemic, the COVID-19. We were supposed to have it in 2020. But it's paragraph 161K on page 114. And I just want to read some phrases. I just really want to read some phrases, and you kind of see which way is it going. Is it going more? And I use the terms. Is it okay if I use the terms pro-life and pro-choice? We're used to hearing those terms.
Yes, I would add to a certain point that we can be pro-life ourselves, but say that I don't think I can say that I can make a choice for something else.
Oh, okay. So let's see what it says here and see where you think it goes and what it does and if it says anything. Now this is our social principle about abortion. It starts out with the beginning of life and the ending of life are the God-given boundaries of human existence. Okay? Our belief in the sanctity of unborn human life makes us reluctant to approve abortion. So you hear the phrasing? Okay. Then there's this, but we are equally bound to respect the sacredness of the life and well-being of the mother and the unborn child. We recognize there are tragic conflicts of life with life that may justify abortion, and in such cases, we support the legal option of abortion under proper medical procedures by certified medical providers. Does all that make sense so far?
Yes.
Please, if you want to make a comment, YouTube, Kelly's monitoring YouTube, type it in. Facebook, type in a comment. We'll stop. We'll deal with it, I promise. And it goes on. There's some other things that are written. But it also says we cannot affirm abortion as a means of birth control or of gender selection. Which happens in some parts of the world. You know, gender selection. So, now it goes on, there's a whole other page that I don't want to get into, but can you see now our stance brings in that do no harm? I mean, it's really from the do no harm part is where I would say this is an outgrowth from. But then the next paragraph, it talks about ministry with those who have experienced an abortion. So now we're on the do good part. We urge pastors to become informed about the symptoms and behaviors that are associated with post-abortion stress and commit our church to continue to provide nurturing ministries to those who terminated pregnancy, to those in the midst of a crisis pregnancy, and to those who give birth. Encourage churches to have contact information for counseling agencies that offer programs to address post-abortion stress for all seeking help. So, would you say in our social principle, and if you're online, go ahead and put, are we pro-life or pro-choice? And online, if you just want to write life or choice, go ahead.
I think we're pro-life except for the extenuating circumstances.
All right, so we're not totally 100% pro-life against all abortions in every circumstance. Is that what you got out of it?
We just don't want to use it as birth control.
Don't want to use it as birth control. Right. Understand that there are those situations when there's these situations you have life and life, kind of that mother and child that you're dealing with, and it's a very painful and difficult decision. And then, of course, no matter what, let's be in ministry with people. Rather than making them feel shamed. Be in ministry. And there are ministries that do help with this. There's counseling, but even those for people that might be considering it and having a reason, that there are ministries, there are counseling. We have a couple of our own church people that are involved in that. So that is, so yeah, it's pro-life, but with compassion. Knowing that sometimes people have to make a difficult choice. So, let's bring it home to where we are in Texas. Because we just haven't stirred the pot up enough tonight, right? Let's bring it home to where we are in Texas. Hearing what our social principle is and our current law that's getting challenged, okay, on abortion in Texas, or the limit, and you being able to sue someone who breaks that law. Do you see that law in line with our social principle? You can give a thumbs up for yes, I do, a thumbs down for no, I don't. If you don't want to commit, that's okay, I understand. And then we might say, okay, so why? Why? So I'm going to say, we had one person in here that said, no, I don't see it that way. So tell us more. I'll probably repeat for those online.
Well, the first thing I would say is a lot of people don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. And the second thing is that it seems to me almost ludicrous to have neighbor pitted against neighbor.
Okay.
To me, that can be very much doing harm.
All right. So one is we know that people don't even know it's 6 weeks. So it takes all that choice out. It takes out the opportunity, if there's a difficult pregnancy, it's not going to be able to happen. That decision of that choice has been taken away for that couple in prayer, their church couple, and in consultation and spiritual guidance from the priest or the pastor. That choice is completely gone. Okay, when there's life against life, a situation. And a wonderful comment that was made, now with the lawsuit, you're pitting neighbor against neighbor, and so now that's doing harm, and, we...
Well, why do we put that in like that?
I don't know, it's to really make sure it doesn't ever happen, but, that's just my thought. But I don't see it as something, and so, should the church, in line with our social principles, speak out against that? Should we engage in doing something about it? Should we encourage our bishops? Should we write to our bishops in the state of Texas to draft something and write together to our state legislature and the governor? I'm sure, that's something that we could do. Should we do that? I'm just throwing out these questions for you all to think about.
What would come back, it would immediately say, this is just keep church and state separate. But there's...
It's okay. We all... Right. Like I said, this is it deep. It cuts to our heart. It's passionate. And I want to just bring back in the second sermon to do no harm. Harm by our own omission, not admission. So if the church stands by and doesn't say anything, and kind of the church, the young church within Texas, we have a similar bill in, Florida or Georgia, but at least they made some exceptions. We have no exceptions here in
There's
Texas.
an exception for health of the mother.
Okay. But where that's just right. So the bishops may have already done it. They may already be thinking about it. I haven't heard, but I'm happy to be corrected. Maybe when they're getting together next, maybe that's what they're planning on doing. It's there we are. So because again we haven't stirred the pot enough, that where we fall, I would say we mostly fall towards pro-life because we say we are reluctant to approve, that we fall towards pro-life, but we also understand that sometimes there's a choice that has to be made. So, the next thing was, how can you be pro-life and pro-death? On both sides, it just intrigues me. We're okay with abortion, but we're not, we're anti-death penalty. Take one life, but not the other. So, let's see where we are as United Methodist within the death penalty. And it will There's, I didn't read the whole thing about abortion. It has several more paragraphs that I think are enlightening and perhaps help you out. So paragraph 164, sub G, okay, the death penalty. We believe the death penalty denies the power of Christ to redeem, restore, and transform all human beings. The United Methodist Church is deeply concerned about crime throughout the world and the value of any life taken by a murder or a homicide, because we believe all human life is sacred and created by God. Therefore, we must see all human life as significant and valuable. For this reason, we oppose the death penalty and urge its elimination from all criminal codes. So, whether you agree with it or not, the statement, again, it's not church law. We have room to discuss, debate, disagree. Interesting for us is we tend towards the pro-life, but then we tend towards here. So, I believe a follower of Christ, one who's trying to follow Christ, will have a difficult time being 100% on this side with no moving to the other side, or 100% on this side with no movement. That's a view that I have. Other Christian pastors have it. I agree with them. They have said it better than I have and have written about it much more articulate than I have, but I can certainly appreciate that. So we tend towards pro-life, but we are definitely anti-death penalty because of our faith that Christ can redeem everyone, and we believe if we take that life, perhaps we have cut that opportunity short. For Christ to redeem, restore, because we also believe that everybody has God's grace. Nobody is apart completely from God's grace. So they have this opportunity to redeem themselves, to be restored. We believe in the resurrection. I've told this story at Easter before, and I do love this story. It was recounted by another Methodist pastor. He saw the story on Good Friday as he was heading out for church to do the Good Friday services. Good Friday is the day that we remember that Jesus Christ died for us on the cross. It's just that Friday right before Easter Sunday. He was getting out, he was watching the news, and there's the person of the week. And I don't know if it was ABC, NBC that did it, maybe CBS. I just want to get them all in. I don't think Fox News was around at the time. It wasn't CNN. It was one of those three. The person of the week was a white supremacist hate monger, and it caught his attention. Why is this person the person of the week? As he's getting ready to go do Good Friday services. And they started talking. He's out of prison, on parole. And he's talking about this ministry that he does to do good. That he goes into neighborhoods and he tries to work and develops things to bring African American children, black children, white children together, Hispanic children, to bring them together, to learn to play together, to live together, to appreciate one another, to respect one another. Remember, he was a white supremacist. Yeah. So the reporter asked, and he was in prison for blowing up the home of perhaps I think he blew up a black church. I don't remember, but then he was on his way to blow up a Jewish synagogue or the home of a prominent Jewish business person. And so the reporter said, "Now, how did you get from there to now here. And he said there was in Christ. While I was in prison, he said, I met the risen Christ. And while I was in prison, I was forgiven by the risen Christ. And I've been freed from my hatred by the risen Christ. And now he's out doing good because of his love for Christ and God and humanity. And perhaps he would have been one. I don't know what state. I don't remember what state. I don't remember if they had capital punishment. Don't know if that case would have gone to that level. But let's just imagine, let's pretend, let's say that they did. Here's one that if the death penalty would have been imposed, this other good would have never happened. It's something for us to think about. And I get the other side. I do get the other side that in some instances, and what they've done is just so horrendous that we believe that them dying is the best thing for humanity. But as Christians, can we really believe that? That takes away the power of Christ from the opportunity to work. And my own bias coming through, I don't know if that's our call.
Well, I know in teaching, when we used to do debates, and this was always one that the kids
Yeah.
liked to do. And one of the things that they always pulled up, well, it was supposedly a deterrent. But that's been proven over and over again, that it is no longer a deterrent. And so, that's fallen by the wayside. Plus, it's more expensive in the long run because they have so many,
Appeals.
they have so many ways to postpone them that it costs more money in the long run, other than the good.
Right.
that could-
So we're talking about in teaching and debate class, this is something they always like to debate that one. One of the arguments was it's a deterrent. That's been shown that it's not, and it actually costs more money, this, than rather keeping them. That I'm summing up for everybody online on that. Well, let's look at John chapter 10, verse 10. John chapter 10, the Gospel of John chapter 10, verse 10. Jesus is talking, and he says, I am the good shepherd. He had said that. Now he says in verse 10, the thief enters to steal, kill, and destroy. But I came so that they may have life indeed, so they could live life to the fullest. So if we let that be one of our cores, one of our core scriptures, one of our core values, as Christ followers, in doing good, doing no harm, and staying in love with God, what helps promote, sustain, increase, and nurture life for people, whether in the natural world, the political world, the economic world, the social community. And because the overall is this idea that life is sacred. It's a gift from God. That life is a gift from God. It's sacred. We also know that life on earth is not eternal, but that God gives that gift beyond. So there's some positive ones, less controversial, less controversial ones. Well, let's stop. Any questions, comments, anything on this so far? Anybody that's watching, you want to make a comment, ask a question, let me know. So if our idea of do no harm, do good, stay in love with God, if we took those and took that as an overlay of our political position, I'm not sure you could be totally Republican or totally Democrat either. But if you use that as an overlay for political views, that might be good. It helps develop. And then, we're doing that. Do no harm, do good, stay in love with God. Use that as an overlay for kind of where we fall socially on social justice issues or socially on issues. If it's do no harm, do good, stay in love with God, how does that inform us on certain things? And even within religious tradition, the religious community now, that we seem to have this tradition, progressive kind of divide. If it's do no harm, do good, stay in love with God, overlay that on where we are, what does that do to us? And I think it's a good way to look at it, to try to see where we are and maybe where we should be. Again, I'm not being a proponent of one political party over another. I'm not taking sides on conservative or liberal or traditional or progressive at this point. But just if you overlay, where do you end up being? I know politically, and what it does when Jeanette and I are discussing and trying to figure out things, during election time, it makes it a challenge. It makes it a challenge. All right, so if we look at where we have that life and the three not so simple rules, do no harm, do good, stay in love with God, and the sacredness of life are at our core. Let me just throw some out and see where you think, well, what might the United Methodist Church, where they fall, yes or no, against or in favor on some things, and we can talk about them. Where do you think the United Methodist Church would fall on, because we have the Sunday coming up, on organ donation? Where do you think we'd be? Yay or nay?
Yay to the pro-life.
Yay,
Seems like.
because it talks about extending the sacredness of life. Okay. Others?
I think that it's a good thing.
It's a good thing, yeah. It's a good thing. Organ transplantation and donation, we believe that organ transplantation and organ donation are acts of charity. And agape love is that highest form of love, the love that God has, and self-sacrifice. We recognize the life-giving benefits of organ and other tissue donation and encourage people of faith to become organ and tissue donors as part of their love and ministry to others in need. So with the do no harm, do good, stay in love with God. What about, here's another one, adoption. What about adoption?
We're going to support that because that's, so they can be raised in Christian faith, blah, blah, blah.
What's that?
They're going to support it. And
Support it?
Be raised in a Christian faith.
To be raised in the Christian faith. And again, if you please online join in, make comments, type them in, or pause if watching on YouTube. So adoption, we believe that children are a gift from God to be welcomed and received. We recognize that some circumstances of birth make the rearing of a child difficult. We affirm and support the birth parents whose choice it is to allow the child to be adopted. So yes, in adoption, and with that, so we commend the birth parents, the receiving parents, and the child to the care of the church, so that the grief might be shared, because as they give up this child, that's going to be hard, there's going to be some grief. Joy might be celebrated, and the child be nurtured in a community of Christian love. So yes, in fact, we have a special liturgy and act of worship that we can do to celebrate the adoption of a child, just as like we do with baptism and confirmation, and that we would be able to do that here within the church. We celebrate that.
International Adoption Day coming up, or is it past?
Isn't it in November?
Yes, November.
Adoption Day? I think so, or February, I'm sorry. I used to know that when I was a family law attorney.
It's November, but I thought
It was one of the best days ever. The United Methodist Church is a proponent or encourages what's called open adoption as much as possible. Sometimes that's not possible. Open adoption is where the child still knows the birth parents. It's not always possible, but that's where. Here's one that may be a little harder. What is it? November 20th. Okay, yeah, boy, the best day ever. Always a great day. And realizing, even though I say it's a great day in family law, because other things there's so much animosity, but I'm not trying to take away from the grief of the people that have given up the children, so I apologize. I wasn't trying to be insensitive that way. From the view of an attorney, it was always nice to see a child get that home. Okay, what about what's called collective bargaining in the economic world? Do you know what collective bargaining is? Where there has to be negotiations between employees and the company, the corporation.
I wouldn't even think that the church was concerned about that, but I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, it's part of what we believe in the economic community. So what do y'all think? Where would the church fall in encouraging it or saying no, it's bad? Collective bargaining to try to give people decent benefits and fair wages.
Try to work things out,
Yeah. We support the right of all public and private employees and employers to organize for collective bargaining into unions and other groups of their own choosing. We support the right of both parties to protection in so doing, and their responsibility to bargain in good faith and within the framework of public interest. So we have, yes, but it goes even further. And I do appreciate this. I mean, we reject the use of violence by either party doing collective bargaining. And we likewise reject permanent replacement of a worker who engages in a lawful strike. We saw that happen a few decades ago. I believe a whole group of people were fired and replaced. I'm not sure when this one came in, but maybe it was before that, maybe it was after that. I do appreciate this so much in this. In order that the rights of all members of the society may be maintained and promoted. We support innovative bargaining procedures that include representatives of the public interest in negotiation and settlement of labor management contracts. So, do you get what that means? So, give me one of the big three automakers. I don't care which one. Pick one. Ford. Let's go with Ford. So Ford and the United Auto Workers have this disagreement. The workers go on strike, so they got to go to bargaining. This means that people from the public, like you and I, should have part of that. We're the ones who buy the product that pays the worker, that also makes Ford money. Because it makes sense. If the workers are going to be paid such an extraordinary amount that we wouldn't be able to afford the Ford product. But we also don't want the company being greedy. So I just think that's an interesting thing. I don't think it's ever done. I think there is influence that is done in these situations, especially if, like, Major League Baseball goes on strike or National Football League goes on strike with social media and Facebook and Twitter. I mean, they're getting the comments, they're hearing. But to really actually include the public interest in that bargaining, I thought was an interesting concept. Maybe a little pie in the sky that would actually happen. But if you're sitting there in Dearborn, Michigan, and you're an executive in Ford, and you have a labor dispute, contact us here at First Belton United Methodist Church. We will send a delegation at our cost, some very intelligent, faithful people to help you out. If you're part of the UAW, the big union, and you're trying to find people, Belton First United Methodist Church, because we believe in the rights of workers, we'll be happy to help you out. We'll come at our own cost to be part of that.
That's a high incentive.
It really is. It really is. But all things are possible with God. Okay, is there a certain? Let me just pause for questions. And of course, if we are going to go and do that, we have to make sure we know our other social principles, how we believe there should be right for health care for all people. People should get a fair wage. But we also believe that corporations are allowed to make money because that's what they're in business for. And if they don't make money, then the workers don't get a pension. No. All right. Questions or comments?
Should there be a 400% difference in there?
Right. Yeah, I mean that's right. So see, Ford, UAW, GM, Honda, any of those, we're here for you. We're ready to serve. We're ready to come and do good. Any questions or comments from anybody online in the sanctuary so far? Too boring? I didn't get you stirred up enough?
It's interesting.
I need to get a more controversial topic. Okay, is there a certain topic that you've wondered about? If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, type it in. You go, well, does the Methodist Church, do they have something they say about gambling or alcohol or anything like that? Be happy to delve into that. Is there one that you're wondering about?
It's weird, there's a book that has every little thing.
What's that?
Everything's in there, huh? Just everything.
I don't know if everything is. I really probably not everything. There's probably things that are not addressed. Because things are always developing. at the next general conference was some of the wording for some of them, or some things get added. So, Kelly, are you seeing anything on YouTube?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything on Facebook. Don't be shy, it's okay. Did you have a certain topic you were wondering about?
You covered two. One's on
I think to keep your religious values and vote is very difficult. It's like you're picking the worst of the better of the two evils in a way.
Yeah, so inside, to have your religious values and to be able to make a clear decision when you're going to vote is very difficult. Yes, it is. It is. So you try to find with what lines up most. Most may not be majority. One person, you may line up with 39%, the other person is only 23%. Neither of those are majority, so it is difficult. It is difficult. The United Methodists do believe we should care about the climate. We should care about the climate. And we shouldn't exploit the earth for our own gain. We do have a statement against overconsumption. So it really comes down, I think, to those three simple: do no harm, do good, stay in love with God, and being stewards of the gifts that God has given us. The world, life, people.
There's always conflicts of where those, like with the climate, when we have people who argue we've got to have workers in the oil fields, and what do we do with them when we have to cut back? These two conflict.
Yes.
Where do we do harm or do good here when we've got to hire these people to do good for the environment?
Right. That's why it's not cut and dry. And actually in our statements about, especially about the one, it does that, we're not in favor of gambling, and yet there's a statement about respecting the sovereignty of nations on that. So yes, it's always this, so if you do this, but what harm is going to be done to do this good, but is there another way, for that, because of the economic community as well. And I do appreciate in the United Methodist Church our social principle affirming family farms and discouraging large corporate takeover of family farms. The family farms has been part of, especially our tradition here in our history in the United States. That's one of those where, okay, but the corporation can make this money, but really the harm that's being done. So I do appreciate that affirmation of, there's people that urban life has its benefits and challenges, but rural life has its benefits and challenges, and have statements about living those kind of lives, but always living in a way as responsible Christians, no matter where we live. Okay. Jesus said, I came to give life. The thief comes to steal it, destroy it. The thief comes to kill, destroy, and steal. When we are dealing with social issues, dealing with social principles, either natural world, economic world, political community, social community, is this something that is destroying life? Is it killing life? Is it stealing life? Jesus said, no, that is not what I come to do. There's a thief that does that. And so that's another way we can ask ourselves, just another way. But Jesus said, I came to give life, come to give it in its fullest. So is it something that is life-giving, enhancing life, producing life, promoting life, making life better for someone? Now, it seems that is very, I don't know, just kind of social, really, but it comes from our faith. And, it comes from our faith. So, all right, let me just, we have 1 minute. We'll close with prayer in just a second. So, we have one more week. If there is a topic, please let me know. Otherwise, you're just going to have to put up with me picking them. Is there a topic that we're hoping, if anybody has one, I would like to know if there's a social principle on this, and we'll talk about it. Please let me know. There is another one that's very controversial. We can talk about it or not. Don't know if we want to get into that. That's okay. And if you say, no, I really don't want to talk about certain ones, let me know which ones those are so I don't go into that. I'll respect what you all want because we have one more week. You can ask me a question and answer pretty much about anything or any of these. And then we're going to take a break until after the first of the year. And then I am currently thinking about what we do after the first of the year. And let me tell you what I'm thinking about. And give us some thought, because I would love to have your input next week, because it will take some time to prepare for. There's been a series on TV. It's aired on television. You get an app for it. You don't have to pay for it. Called The Chosen. They have done two seasons of it. It is funded by the public. You can make a donation to fund. Season 3 is almost fully funded. I think they're still trying to get the last episode. It's one of the best portrayals of Jesus in that time and with the character development that I have seen. And it was recommended to me, and I highly recommend it. There's a Bible study that goes along with it. So what you do is the week before, you watch the episode, and you can watch it for free. You can pay for it on Amazon Prime, but you don't have to. You can watch it for free. And then there's questions and answers. There is a book that goes with it. There are times when I will disagree with the author of the book from their theological standpoint. We will say, well, that, there is that, but we in the Methodist Church, from a Wesleyan perspective, here's where we are on it.
Oh, it's written like that.
Yes, but I didn't want to say that. That is true. That is true. There are times we will do that, not all the time. But they have done, thank you to the writers, the producers, the directors, the creators of The Chosen. I can't thank you all enough for the quality, the way you are doing this, the creativeness, being true to what is written in the Gospels, and yet with the creativity of bringing humor and joy into it, and the character development that has been done. Really, I can't thank you all enough. It's been one of the best, rather than some of those other movies about Jesus that are just really too melodramatic. It shows Jesus as Son of God, but being human, the disciples with all their warts and blemishes, and yet their desire to follow Christ. Just tremendous. So I appreciate that. So I thought that would be fun to do, especially after the first year leading up to Lent and Easter, and kind of getting an idea on that. But you got to commit. If you're going to do it, you got to commit to at least 3 weeks. To at least getting to the 3rd episode of season 1, where you really begin to appreciate how the character they're developing in Jesus. The first 2 kind of are really a lot about different character development. And you really don't start getting hooked until the 3rd episode. At least I do. All right, let's pray. God, we thank you for this time. And God, we know there are so many needs that are represented here within this time for those in the sanctuary, those joining us live stream, and that will watch later online. to pray for. God, on this eve of Veterans Day, we again thank you and celebrate our veterans. We thank you for their sacrifice. And God, through your grace, may we have a grateful heart at all times. And help us through the power of the Holy Spirit to illuminate our hearts and minds so that we can continue to live our life in doing no harm, doing good, and staying in love with God. Amen. Thank you all so much. Love you all so much. Thank you for the time and attention this evening.